Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Arm Coach Podcast, episode number 7. Well, hello. I hope you're all having a great week. I actually just got to spend the day with one of my best friends. She's someone that's known me for a very long time. We met shortly after I graduated from college, and we were talking a lot about what motivates change. In part because since we've known each other for so long, we've both seen each other through different jobs, different relationships, different points in our life. And for me, especially, she's watched me go through periods where I was eating a lot and really struggling with my weight, and then trying to cut back and trying different diets. Now she sees me and what I'm doing today, how I am today. And so we were talking about change and what really motivates change in our lives. And she said something that I thought was so interesting, and I wanted to share with you. She talked about how for her, when she thinks about change or something that she wants to do differently, she always looks at it as an experiment. So she's trying something out, she's collecting data, she puts herself in the position of being the scientist. And I thought that that was such a great way to frame it, especially because so many of us, myself included for a very long time, looked at change and trying to change my behaviors and change my habits as an all or nothing endeavor. It wasn't about collecting data. It was really about, I have to do this perfectly. I have to get this right. I can't make any mistakes. And I think that our framework is so helpful when thinking about a different way to embark on the process of change. A way to think about it as collecting data. And I wanted to share that with you today because today we're going to be talking all about urges and what to do when the urge to blow off our workout or to overeat appears. I think if you can take this framework and this idea of thinking of what you're trying out as an experiment, as something where you're collecting data, rather than I have to do it right, or I'm going to do it wrong, or there's a perfect way to do it. I think that that will be really beneficial for you. The idea of what do I do with the urge to blow off my arm workout or overeat is something that comes up all the time with people that I work with. And people will tell me they understand these tools. They really like the approach. They like that I have a different way of thinking about it. But what happens when they make a plan and all of a sudden their urge to go off plan appears? What do they do with it? Some people will tell me, well, it's just so impossible to resist. I had to give in. It came on so strong or so suddenly, or it was so intense that I didn't know what else to do with it. I think that that's a really common experience. If we're going to understand what to do with it, and there's a lot more that you can do than just resist or give in, if we're going to start to understand that, before we go there, we have to really understand what an urge is. I'd like to think about an urge as just part of the emotion of desire. You're familiar with the emotion of desire. Now, we're talking about urges in the context of being sedentary and eating, but we have the emotion of desire around lots of different things. It's just the emotion of wanting something. There's the emotion of being happy. There's the emotion of sadness. There's the emotion of anger. We have all these different emotions, and this one is just the emotion of wanting something. So you have the craving for something, food, the couch, you wish you had it, you long for it, you yearn for it, you can feel this desire toward anything. You can feel it towards wanting to check your email or going for a walk. You can lust after a car or an outfit or a vacation, or you can also desire food. Desire is not just limited to eating. It comes into our life around many different things. But one piece that's really important to understand is that people will describe and you will experience desire in very different ways. Sometimes your desire, your want, your craving, your longing for something is quite calm. I would like to have it. I would like to have a piece of cake. I would like to watch TV. It has this calm energy around it. It doesn't feel insistent. And other times you experience the exact opposite. There's an intensity to your desire. It feels really important. There's an urgency. No surprise there. Urgency and urge, how the two words are connected. It feels like the object of your desire is something that needs immediate attention. And need is a really important word for you to pay attention to. Whenever you find yourself thinking, I really need to eat this, I really need a treat, usually there's an intensity behind that. It's not a calm energy. It feels really important and like it has to be dealt with right away. We can experience our desire in a calm way, and we can also experience our desire in an intense way. And of course, in between, there is an entire spectrum. But then the question that people ask me is, okay, so why do some of my desires feel calm? Why do they feel like just little kind of inklings of what I would like to do? And others feel so intense. And for a lot of people, that urge to skip a workout, that urge to eat is one of those desires that feels intense. And the answer has to do with everything about the reward that your brain is getting. At the very base level, your brain has a simple goal. It wants to seek pleasure and avoid pain and do these things as efficiently as possible and wants you to expend the least amount of energy as possible. Your brain wants to seek out rewards and avoid pain. Our brain places a priority on things that reward us. Now, I want you to think about all of the things that you can desire. You can desire food and money and sex and nature and time alone and clothing and Facebook and also alcohol. There are lots of things that you can desire more than what I just listed. And all of these things will produce varying levels of a reward in your brain. So the reward for going on a walk in your brain is not going to be as great as the reward for having a piece of cake. You're not going to get as much dopamine in your brain when you go on a walk than when you finish a piece of cake, simply because humans developed sugar to be a concentrated form of reward. Sugar delivers an influx of dopamine into your brain, and that influx is greater than many of your other desires. Now, I also want you to think about how many times you've given your brain the reward of food or your phone. How many times have you done that? I talk a lot about the idea that when we eat more than we want, in large part, what's going on is that we have created a habit around our eating. Think about this. Think about in your life how many times you've eaten when you're bored or with friends or after work or a sporting event or when you go out to a restaurant or when you're celebrating. We do this, and we do this over and over and over again, and we're not even realizing that we're creating a habit. We're not even realizing that our brain has come to expect to be rewarded with an influx of dopamine at a certain time of day, at certain events, when we see certain people. We're not even aware that we're doing this, but we are unconsciously conditioning our brains to expect a reward at certain times. And if you decide that you want to create an eating plan and stick to it, you deny yourself the reward that excess food brings. You will have a strong desire to go get it. You will have an urge. Now, that's not the only reason that I think the desire to eat can feel so strong for so many people. Part of it is, yes, food delivers a bigger reward than many other things we desire. It's a concentrated reward. But your brain isn't just getting this influx of dopamine from consuming food. For many people who eat when they're not hungry, your brain is actually getting a second equally powerful reward, but a reward that we don't often think about. And that's the reward of dulling or getting rid of a negative emotion. It's the reward of how food can change our emotional state. So people will say, I like to eat because I want to relax. I want to have fun. I want to unwind. I want to feel confident. I want to feel attractive. I want to feel less lonely. Whatever it is, we often think of our eating in the terms of the upside that food is giving us. And what happens is that when we just focus on the upside, we often miss what's on the other side. We miss what we're trying to move away from is a negative emotion that we're feeling in the moment before we were eating. We're trying to get rid of feeling insecure or anxious or stressed out or bored or lonely. We miss that piece that we're eating often to change our feeling state. And part of that is the way in which food can cover up how we're feeling. For most of us, we do this completely unconsciously. But even though it's unconscious, we're still teaching our brain the same lesson that you can dull or cover up or get rid of a negative emotion when you eat. And that's a reward in and of itself. So there are two rewards. That's the reward that you get, that everyone gets when they eat, that influx of dopamine. But for many people who get into the habit of turning to food as a quick and easy way to feel better, to relax, to unwind, whatever it is, what we're also doing at the same time is getting the reward of teaching ourselves that we can dull a negative emotion when we eat. Here's the thing. The urge to eat is completely harmless. It cannot harm you. You have just trained your brain to want the reward that food gives you, the dopamine reward, and the reward of getting rid of negative emotion. You've just trained your brain to want that reward in certain situations. You weren't born with this desire. You weren't born with a desire to overeat. It's not a need. It wasn't programmed in. It was something that you learned, and you learned it through repetition. You learned it through unconsciously repeating this over and over and over again, and never realizing that you were creating a habit. The only way your desire can be harmful is if you obey that desire over and over and over again. A lot of people feel like they don't know how not to obey that desire. They only know how to resist it. A lot of you don't know what to do when that desire appears. Here's the problem. Most people think that if they cut back or create a meal plan, they shouldn't have any urges at all. That they should just be able to snap their fingers and decide that they aren't going to eat off plan and they're going to follow it, whatever it is, and they should not have any problem. You can control yourself or you can't. Your brain can handle it or it can't. You have a problem or you don't because it's so black and white. Most people don't want to have any acknowledgement that they have any sign of struggle at all because they're afraid of what that struggle means. We go into our workout plans or our meal plans. We go into cutting back, thinking that we shouldn't have any urges. So that's the first problem. The second problem is that no one has ever taught you what to do with an urge when it appears. No one ever shows us what to do with it. First of all, we're not expecting it. And then we don't know what to do when it appears. And most of us will just try to resist it. We'll try to push it away. We'll try to use willpower. But the urge will keep appearing and we will keep resisting and we'll feel like we're doing something wrong. We don't understand why this cycle is continuing. And the reason you don't understand is only because no one has ever showed you that you can deal with an urge. When an urge appears, there are several things that you can do, and some are more helpful than others. There are 4 things that you can do when an urge appears, and this applies to all urges, not just to urges to eat. And those 4 things are: you can react, you can resist, you can distract, or you can observe. I'm going to explain to you what all of these look like. You probably have had experience reacting, right? You have the thought, I want to have a piece of cake. Your desire bubbles up, and then you go get the cake. You go get the reward. And if you repeat that enough, you start to reinforce the cycle. You start to build the habit. Simply, reacting is just feeling desire and then going and getting what you want. It's opening the cupboard or ordering the dessert or heading into the pantry. That's reacting. That's what so many of us have done. Many of us for years, thousands of times have reacted. And that's why we have the habit and why we have the habit in certain situations. You can also resist when the urge to go off plan appears. So you can have the thought come up, oh, I want to have a piece of cake. You're feeling the desire, and then you can say no. You can resist. You can fight it. You can tell yourself, I'm not going to give in. And for a lot of people, it feels like a war. It feels very tense because there's a part of you that wants it, and there's a part of you that's trying really hard to resist it. Willpower can work. You can say no to your desire over and over again. You can do that, but here's the problem. Most people find it exhausting. The reason why most people find it exhausting is what's happening in their body. If you pay attention to what's happening in your body when you're using willpower with all your might, you will see that your body is really tense and constricted, and your breathing is shallow, and you might notice yourself sort of gripping or clutching. This is what white knuckling is. When people talk about white knuckling through their desire, this is what it looks like. This is the sort of very tense resistance going on. And that's in part why it feels so exhausting, because an urge is appearing and you're just using all your mental strength, all your fortitude and energy to resist it. A lot of people are familiar with that, right? They're familiar with willpower as the way to cut back or to change their workout habits or eating habits. And what I'm suggesting is that there are other things that you can do. The third thing that a lot of people will turn to, and most people will turn to this very unconsciously, they may not even be aware of it. When the urge appears, when they think the thought, I would like a piece of cake, and the desire appears, they might decide to distract themselves or think of something else. This looks like turning on the TV, drinking a cup of coffee, trying to keep yourself busy. It might look like removing yourself from a situation where people are eating, or deciding that you're not going to go out if you know that food is going to be there, right? It's the sense of, okay, I'm just going to keep myself either as far away from, or my brain is occupied with something else, so I don't have to think about it. Now, a lot of people will do this, and they'll start doing this lots of times, not even realizing it. The sense of, okay, well, I'm just going to drink something. I'm just going to go have something to occupy my hands, or I'm going to turn on the TV, whatever it is. I don't think that there is anything wrong with distraction. And a lot of people may find in the beginning, especially when they haven't practiced how to handle the urges in different ways, they may find the distraction is helpful. The only problem I see with distraction is that it's not a very good long-term solution. Most people get to a point where they don't want to entirely remove themselves from being around food. They might have friends that go to lunch. They might have, they might want to go out to dinner. They still might want to go out to bars, or they might want to go to a sporting event. It's pretty hard to completely remove yourself from ever being around food. But if distraction is your option of choice when the urge appears, then you're not going to get a sense of, okay, so what do I do? How do I handle it other than keeping my brain busy with something else? So the fourth option you have is to observe an urge. You can have the thought, I would like a piece of cake. I want to eat it. I need a piece of cake. You can have the desire appear, the urge appear, and you can tell yourself, everything is fine. Nothing has gone wrong. You can really welcome that urge, like, oh, hello, it's you again. Of course you're here because it's 7 o'clock and I just got home from work and I'm used to walking into the pantry when I get home from work and I'm not doing that. So of course that urge is here. I trained you to be here. I didn't know I was doing it, but I did. This was supposed to happen. Now that's a totally different energy than resisting. Instead of saying, I'm pushing it away and I wish it wasn't here and I'm not going to give in. This is a really strong energy. That's totally different from what I'm talking about, which is expecting that the urge is going to be there and welcoming it, saying like, yeah, hi, this makes perfect sense that you're here and I'm okay with an urge being here. When you shift to this option, when you feel the urge in your body and you're not judging it, you're not resisting it, you're not trying to cover it up or distract yourself, you're just trying to notice. That is where all your power comes back. Because many of us feel like we're at the mercy of our urges. We feel like I couldn't resist it. It was just too strong. And what I want to offer to you is that when you're able to look at it, when you're able to welcome it, when you're able to see the urge and not judge it and not make it mean anything, you can notice it for what it is. And most people will describe an urge as this. They will describe it as sort of a sense of rushing or an immediacy that they feel in their body. Some people might even liken it to almost like adrenaline. It's the sense of fastness. People will talk about speed a lot with urges, but if you're able to be aware of that and also breathe, take a couple of deep breaths, don't be afraid of the urge and just try to sit with it, you realize that you are not at the mercy of an urge. You can be with an urge. You can sit with it. You can watch it, and it will eventually go away on its own. Now, this takes practice because most of us don't have the experience of doing this. We have the experience of reacting, resisting, or distracting. So it will take practice for you to realize that you can observe, you can welcome it, you can expect that will come. And when it comes, it doesn't mean anything has gone wrong. And you can notice what it feels like. You are not at the mercy of an urge to eat. You always have free will. People really don't like observing their urges because they usually have this belief that something's gone wrong, that it's a problem. If they feel an urge, it's a sign of something bad, but nothing has gone wrong. Your urge to eat or skip a workout, it's supposed to be there. You created that habit. You didn't know it, but you did. You created the habit by routinely skipping a workout or eating when you weren't hungry, when you were celebrating and when you were feeling certain emotions, when you were feeling anxious or stressed out or insecure or lonely. You repeated that enough times and you started to create a habit, and that's all the urge is there to tell you, that you have created something that has become unconscious. And the way you will bring it back, the way you'll be able to undo that habit is to bring consciousness back to the habit. And you do that first by observing the urge. Now, I'd like to talk about it this way, that the idea that you can't change something unless you're willing to look at it. So if we take it outside of the realm of eating, we think about the idea of debt. You may have been in this position, or you might know someone. There are a lot of people in debt, and sometimes they won't even know how much. They'll just have a rough ballpark estimate. That's how much they don't want to look at it. What are your options in that moment? What are the options when you owe $20,000 on your credit card? You can keep spending. You can keep using that credit card. You can wish that it would go away. You can think that this is unfair and how come this is my problem and why am I in so much debt? You can also never open your bills. You can pretend it's not there. You can not tally up your balance. You can focus on everything else and tell yourself you'll deal with it later. Or you can open up the bill. You can look at your credit card statement. You can log into the bank account online, and you can see what's going on and figure out a way forward. The only way that you really can start to change is if you're willing to look at it. And for so many people, they're not willing to look at that urge to not exercise or the urge to eat. They just want it to go away because they're so sure that it means something is wrong. It doesn't mean anything has gone wrong. If you have created a habit, there is a reason why you have an urge. Your urge will pass. It will. It cannot last forever. But you've probably been so busy reacting or resisting or distracting that you've never given yourself the opportunity to watch it pass. Because the only way to have that opportunity is to be open to it. Okay, so what do you do when the urge to eat appears or the urge to not work out? The very first thing you have to do is figure out what option you are in. Are you reacting? Are you resisting? Are you distracting? Or are you trying to observe? Trying to observe is going to be the work that's going to move you forward. It's going to feel awkward, and it is going to feel a little uncomfortable, probably. You're going to not be sure if you're doing it right, but I will tell you that it's just a skill that you need to practice, right? Consciously practice and consciously build. You can do that by telling yourself that nothing's gone wrong. You can do that by welcoming the urge. You may have created this habit unknowingly, but you can undo this habit. If you created it unknowingly, the way to undo it is to bring consciousness to it. The urge to eat cake does not have power over you. You are not at the mercy of it. You just haven't practiced different ways of dealing with it. You've been very practiced, probably, if you have done this work on your own at resisting or distracting, but that doesn't really let you look at it. It doesn't let you feel like you are not at the mercy of it. It tells you you have to push it away or you have to cover it up. But you don't have to do either of those things. You can just notice how the urge feels in your body. You can try to describe it. You can know that an urge to eat or skip a workout is perfectly normal. And once you're able to do that, you can also start to ask yourself, okay, what makes the sensation in my body that accompanies an urge to eat or drink or skip a workout so unpleasant that I would rather react, resist, or distract? Can I just be with it? Can I put faith in the idea that it will pass? All right, so just to recap, urges are part of the emotion of desire. And our desire, we can feel it calmly, or we can feel it intensely, or everything in between. And if you are feeling it intensely, one of the things you have to pay attention to is the reward associated with the object of your desire. And for many people, that reward is twofold. It's the influx of dopamine you get when you have a bite, but it's also the knowledge that having a piece of cake can change how you feel. It's a quick and easy fix to change your emotional state. And for many people, they unknowingly get in the habit of eating to get rid of negative emotions. The other piece to remember is that when an urge appears, nothing has gone wrong. You are supposed to have urges. If you've been in the habit of missing workouts or of overeating, and now you want to cut back or eat on plan, you're going to have urges. That's normal. The only problem is that no one showed you what to do with them. You've probably spent a lot of time reacting or resisting and maybe even distracting. But what I want you to think about today is what you can do to observe. What can you do to be perfectly fine and not judge the urge and even welcome it? Because that's the moment when you can start to change it. that's the moment when you can start to have authority over the urge to eat instead of feeling like you are at the mercy of it. That's it for today, everyone. Let me know what you think or if you have any questions. I'll see you all next week.